How do you see the change that it is all ready to bring about in the Indian jewelry sector?
First of all, Manisha, it's going to create a lot of trust amongst consumers. And as you know, prices have shot up significantly. You know, people shell out 50,000 rupees for 10 grams of gold. 2 years ago, it was hardly 30,000. So at these prices, certainly, you've got to create further differentiation. And trust is very, very important because people with hallmarking certificate of the jewelry will feel a lot more confident that there is some process behind this trust. So I am very positive, and as you rightly said, it has been in the works for nearly 2 decades now. So it doesn't come a day later or day sooner. So I think it has got some transition problems, and that would be addressed.
I am going to speak about all of that. But first of all, Chirag, this one is to you. What is the kind of preparedness that you see in the markets? Because the numbers that have been thrown up by BIS and various industry agencies still look bleak. I mean, is the market ready for this mandatory hallmarking?
I think, Manisha, there are a couple of issues. One is obviously when the government announced compulsory hallmarking, about a couple of years ago, we had pandemic which came in between. So obviously a lot of, stock which was non-hallmarked in nature either could not be sold in or, we've not seen recycling happening. And so I think there is also some sort of optimism among a lot of players that, either a 20 carat or a 23 carat jewelry would eventually be allowed. And that's why we are not seeing sort of panic situation in the retail side of the market. Otherwise, by now, you would have seen a lot of refineries running on full capacity with non-hallmark material coming to them to, kind of refine. So that is something which has not yet happened. However, I believe that, we're going to have another probably 6 to 9 months of teething problems with regards to lack of clarity, with regards to lack of hallmarking center in some of the smaller towns. I think there are still some discussions going on whether the manufacturer should hallmark this or whether it should be the retailers, responsibility. So there are these issues which are there, and I think it will take another 6 months or so for those two kind of things to normalize.
So while the hallmarking is law now, it is mandatory from this week itself, but we all believe that the clarity, the concerns that the markets are waiting for right now perhaps could take a couple of quarters before all of that is sorted out. Mr. Mehta, this one is to you. So there are various concerns, and let's talk about that. There is some clarity that we are awaiting, but there are so many questions to talk about right now. So when you talk about mandatory hallmarking, there still are some glitches when it comes to UID, the storage, traceability. Do you think the only thing that can help right now is perhaps more clarity coming from the government?
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, UID is a major issue because the jeweler sells goods on a mix and match basis at the retail counter, and the UID software is not capable of taking that mix and match point into its software. So that is one of our major concern. Traceability is another concern because most of the jewelers would not like their customers' names to be revealed, customer name and data to be revealed to the authorities. The other important matter is the criminal aspect in respect of selling impure jewelry. The point as to who is responsible for in case the hallmarking is not found to be correct. So these are certain issues which are of most important nature. Apart from this, there are issues like very few hallmarking center exist in the country. There is a point of old jewelry. What happens to the old jewelry? Whether money can be borrowed on the old jewelry which does not match to the prescribed caratage. What happens when the old jewelry is sold?
All right, that's quite a bit of a question there, Mr. Mehta. So do you think it's fine for the industry to go ahead with the law even as we await so many clarifications?
I personally feel that the hallmarking needs to be implemented in the phased manner, and ample time needs to be given for liquidating the old stock and old inventory which is available with the jewelers. Apart from this, the special exemption needs to be given for old jewelry, antique jewelry, heritage jewelry, and in respect of jewelry which is being taken as mortgage by the NBFCs and bank, because in case the borrower default, what happens to those jewelry? The banks and NBFC will not be able to sell those jewelry. So certain exemptions are definitely required, and I think the ministry and BIS are doing a good job, and they are considering our request. And I personally feel that things would be sorted out in a week's time.
So many questions right now, and as the industry says that the bullion jewelers had all the time to ensure that they had hallmark jewelry. Ditto goes for the regulators. I mean, they had all the time to iron out these issues on the last day, and we are still awaiting all of this clarity. And as per the latest data, around 40% of gold jewelry is what is being hallmarked currently. So more than half the jewelry in the country has not been hallmarked. How do you look at this, current condition? Maybe we're not talking about metros, but then the smaller towns also end up buying so much gold. How is this situation going to be taken care of? Som, this one is to you.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear the thing. Well, I think, Manisha, this is there are centers closer to 1,000 in the country now. Yes, there are pockets where they're concentrated, and there are certain districts where they're not available. But that's how also the jewelry business is spread out. It is concentrated in certain places, and it is sparse in certain other places. So it would be very difficult to say that because of that you shouldn't bring mandatory hallmarking. But I agree with Surendra Mehta that some of the questions which are more in the nature of clarification should be out in the public very clearly, and some which have transition issues, maybe a little time in terms of these criminal liabilities, etc. If that is clarified, I think the industry will be a lot more confident about it. So I think it's now it's been made mandatory. There is no point kicking it down the road further. We have waited 2 decades, and the industry really has worked to bring this to this point. I don't think we should defer this, but we should make it a lot easier for transition.
So I absolutely agree with you, Som. My only point was, since we knew the date was coming, why weren't a lot of issues already worked upon or the conversations taken more strongly? Chirag, this one is to you. Now, we do understand that the registration process has been made online and automatic. And even then, the latest numbers show that out of nearly 4 lakh jewelers in the country, less than 40,000 have registered. Are we looking at a lower registered number as we go ahead? There have been various reports suggesting that the smaller jewelers in very small towns, districts, etc., perhaps will close down because they're not interested in doing this kind of a business.
I think, Manisha, firstly, there is still a lack of clarity on how many jewelers are really in this country. And because, what we've realized is that, while we talk about 400,000 jewelers in this country, a lot of these are artisanal, extremely small jewelers who may not have, that kind of know-how to come under this net. So essentially, from our understanding, the jewelers number who are actually sizable and who really dominate the market are roughly between 100 to 150,000 jewelers. A lot of the other jewelers are in very small villages who may not be able to sell hallmark jewelry as of now. So I think we'll have to work out with that kind of number of 100 to 150,000 numbers. So I would say that at this moment, 40 to 50,000 jewelers have registered. That's a good start. Probably more and more jewelers will eventually come in as associations start awareness program, as BIS start awareness program. So as I said earlier, probably 6 to 9 months is when we will see this really, kind of playing out in the market.